the things that are passed down. So, Tori, what's something you've inherited?
Oh my God, my mom would say the 2 B's. You guys decide what those are.
Well,
open to interpretation. Yeah. What about you?
Well, from my mother, I inherited her love of crushed velvet. Ooh. But also her need for words of affirmation. So could y'all give a round of applause for my outfit really quick? Woo! Thank you. And scene. Okay.
Nice. Well, I mean, we're going to get right into it. You guys ready or what? I have a little bit of surprise. I know it's normally 7. We have 8 for you tonight. I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, I love you too. All right, we're going to get right into it. The first storyteller is Maria-Luisa Ornelas-June. Marcie is going to share a story about a sneaking suspicion she had at a very young age.
Please put your hands together for Maria-Luisa Ornelas-June.
Some people talk about their ancestral roots pulling at them. Well, mine, when they came pulling at me, they pulled me all the way back to 1492, when the Spanish crown issued the Edict of Expulsion that gave Jews 2 options: convert to Catholicism or hit the road. Fast forward to 1978, and I'm 13 years old in Laredo at my grandmother's house for the weekly Tortilla Sunday. And Tortilla Sunday was a big breakfast spread that she made for the whole family. And it's Mexican big, not American nuclear family. So we had tios, tias, cousins. My great-grandmother, who was born in the 1890s, was there. And my grandmother would hand make, a stack of flour tortillas. She would make guacamole, choriqueso, huevos rancheros. And we had just finished enjoying this huge spread, and all the kids were helping clean up, while the adults had a sobremesa with a little cafecito and pan dulce while they chismeared. And I am washing the disposable plastic dishes that my grandmother had and trying to get the chorizo grease off when I hear them say, we're Jewish. I was like, wait, what? We were the most devoutly Catholic family I could think of. We went to Catholic school. We went to church every Sunday. We went to confession on Saturday so that you could go to communion on church on Sunday. And it stunned me. So, this is 1978. There's no Google. So in South Texas parlance, no lo podíamos googlear. And, fast forward to 2011, and I've gotten married, I've had children, I've lived in different parts of the world, and I've returned to the United States. And my mother-in-law enjoyed genealogy. So she was going to a conference in Salt Lake City, and she said, is there something that you want to know about your family? And I'm like, oh, why, yes. And so she comes back a week later, gives me a family tree, and she gives me an excerpt from a graduate student dissertation from UCLA, and it was entitled Chicano Jews of South Texas. I'm like, oh, that's the first piece of evidence I've gotten that this is true. So again, fast forward to 2019, and I hear that the Spanish government will grant citizenship to people who can prove their Sephardic ancestry. So I called up a rabbi, and I worked with some genealogists, and I jumped through all the hoops, and I got my citizenship. But the thing that really set me back on my heels is I found out that not only did we have Jewish ancestors, but that 2 of them were burned at the stake in Las Canarias by the Office of the Inquisition because they were Judaizing. They were Jewish. They were practicing their faith. And shortly after that, the pandemic started, so it gave me time to reflect on my ancestry. And I remembered a story from when I was 4 years old, and my tia Amparo died. She was a caretaker at one of the missions here, and at the house, we were made to put cloths over all the mirrors. We couldn't listen to music. And I was 4 years old, and I'm like, what are we doing? And they're like, eso es luto. That's mourning. Well, now that I know this story, I'm like, that's Shiva. And so, I remembered, again, being in first grade and hearing about the Christians being fed to the lions. And I was so shocked, I threw up at school. So I came home and I told my dad what happened, and he was commiserating, and he said, when I was young, I was worried about the Inquisition. At that time, it didn't make sense to me. I was 6 years old. But in retrospect, well, he was having this epigenetic fear response to our ancestry. And, it makes sense because it was horrific ancestry. Good in that I survived, but it was hard, the things that they went through. And I wondered then, what did they do so that I could be here today? So that we survived. And I thought of another story. I was in middle school, and I was talking with friends, and I said, asina instead of asi. Oh, my father and grandfather immediately scolded me, and they're like, you sound ignorant. Okay. Well, I come to find out that the word asi is Spanish for the Ladino word ancina. So asina is a bastardization of ancina. Ancina comes from Ladino, and that was the language of the Sephardic Jews of Spain. So I was getting this ancestral generational scolding so that I wouldn't sound Jewish. They framed it so that I would, come across as Spanish. But they had to do something to let us hide in plain sight. And there were little things like that happened to us. And so now when I look at my ancestry and I look at my culture, when I see the tortilla, the flour tortilla, I'm like, that's the pita of North America. And, none of this has made me change my mind about leaving my Catholic faith, but I really appreciate all that my ancestors did so that I could be here today. So, on a Friday evening when the sun is setting, at the beginning of Shabbat, I light 2 candles, and then I serve myself a little sip of tequila. And I raise a toast to my ancestors. Pa todos los haters that didn't want us here, l'chaim. Thank you.
Not burned at the stake. That's all I was thinking. Also, I thought she said Ensira, but no, I get it. That was great. Give her a hand one more time.
I loved it, and I was just thinking I had an ancestry kit that I haven't used yet.
Oh my God, I'm 2% Jewish. I'm excited.
Our next storyteller is Marcie Trevino Ripper. Marcie shares a story about dealing with a paper mess in the wake of loss.
Please welcome to the stage Marcie Trevino Ripper.
All right. Hi, everyone. So I have a story about the mess I inherited. It started in 2022. My aunt passed away on my birthday, no less. And she was married to my uncle, and they had a beautiful marriage. They built this beautiful home together in the mountains. So needless to say, he was really lonely. And he was a military man, so he was very disciplined. And so he just kind of used that discipline and just took the loneliness with him through life, but wouldn't really admit it to himself. And so it was really sad to see him going through that. And it made him susceptible to a lady that we now call the pirate hooker. And what I mean by that is she was a blonde, big-boobed, short, petite woman who kind of weaseled her way in, pirate style. And that's a story I'm excited to share with y'all today. So she started messaging my uncle pretty vulgar messages on Facebook. She literally slid into his DMs. At 63, I didn't know y'all did that. But but he, fell for it. He was super lonely, and he was by himself. He lived in a different state than our family, and it kind of spiraled really fast out of control. She was an addict, and so she was a heavy drinker, and she influenced his drinking. He was no saint. He had his own struggles with alcohol, and it just escalated with her. They were a pretty toxic pair. So one night, they are driving down a dark mountain road after drinking, right? Shouldn't have been driving. And she asked to be let out. She asked to be let out of the car. This dark mountain road, they got in a fight. She wanted out. He stopped and let her out. He went on. She never showed back up anywhere, so he went to look for her. Well, she had fallen in the road this way, and he ran her over. And didn't see her, dark mountain road. She was very inebriated. He was too. Horrible accident. Police get called. He gets arrested. She goes to the hospital. We hadn't talked to him in months. He cut us out because we were disapproving of said pirate hooker. And and so a family member ends up driving across state lines to bail him out. He didn't have anyone else. He had cut a lot of friends off because of it all. And he admits to this family member that bailed him out, like, this lady ruined my life. I just miss my wife. I don't know how I'm going to come back from this. He was facing a felony charge at that time. So it was not looking great. My uncle drops him off, my other uncle, the family member that bailed him out, drops him off, goes to check on him the next day, and my uncle committed suicide. So now this is the second loss in that year, 7 months later. I come to find out I'm the executor of the estate. I'm the family attorney, so it made sense why I got appointed, and I knew what to do because I had done probate and estate planning law in the past, and I quickly kind of used the practicalities of it all to just kind of start moving in one direction. And we plan him this beautiful memorial about a month later after his passing. I get home from that, and I get served with a lawsuit from said pirate hooker. And she was suing for personal injury, and rightly so. I mean, she was pretty severely injured. I got it. As an attorney, I got it. But it still sucked. It meant that I needed to rev up a defense of that suit because we couldn't kind of let the estate completely dissolve at the hands of her and that injury suit because, they're asking for tons of money. So I hire a bunch of attorneys, me being one myself, my husband actually as well. And we do the best we can. We end up settling that lawsuit. And in the midst of all that, I find out 8 days before this accident happened, my uncle made her a beneficiary on an investment account, pretty significant investment account. So now I sue her for what's called undue influence, basically arguing that she influenced him to make the change with malintent. And so now I'm facing another lawsuit. I'm the one bringing that lawsuit. We end up settling it. So we settle everything. We are able to salvage as much of the estate as we can. It was a pretty significant estate. My aunt and uncle worked really hard. They didn't have children, so the nieces and nephews, me being the oldest, were their babies. That and of course pets. They had pet babies. One is here in San Antonio to this day, and so. We're able to start liquidating all the assets and start kind of wrapping up the estate. And so hindsight, looking back now, I'm kind of starting to really process and realize that in a way, I'm grateful she got out of the car because if she hadn't, she probably would have weaseled her way into more and we would have never seen our uncle again and everything my aunt and uncle built, we would have just never, ever been a part of. So yes, I inherited this mess, but I call it a bittersweet mess at this point. Additionally, this beautiful mountain home they built, we got to spend a couple years taking our family up there, and every family member kind of had their own time in the house, and it was beautiful. We got snowed in the last time we were there. My kids thought it was so cool. My husband, not so much. And again, bittersweet. Additionally, my family, my sister and my nephew, my cousins, were able to inherit some financially. We never, ever thought that would be possible at our generation. I'm a first-generation college graduate, so my husband and I are like hustling to do that for our kids, and now to kind of be a beneficiary of that is, again, bittersweet. And then the biggest lesson I think I've learned from this all, And this is just managing the estate over the last 2 years, but even bigger picture for me, I've had 8 losses, pretty big losses in the last 7 years. So my counselor calls this compounding grief. And I've started to write about this a little and kind of process it more. This has been a really great mechanism to do that as well. But a really good friend of mine pointed out, Marcie, you've got compounding resilience. And that to me is probably the biggest bittersweet takeaway from this entire story. So thank you. I probably didn't go 7 minutes because I spoke too fast.
Pirate hooker. What a bitch. Okay. I love how I scared everybody. They're getting off before 7 minutes. That's fun. One more time for Marcie. Let her hear it, please. Slipping in the DMs. You do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
No. No.
Yeah, me either. What? No. Okay. Our next storyteller is Gabby Gonzalez. Gabby shares a story about the love she has for San Antonio and who gifted her this affinity.
Put your hands together for Gabby Gonzalez.
So, I inherited my love of San Antonio from my dad. Mario Gonzalez was my dad's name. My sister and I lovingly called him Papa Bear, and a lot of his friends called him the Dancing Bear because that man knew how to dance, and the ladies at the club loved him for it. So my dad loved dancing and singing. His favorite tunes were the Hanel tunes. His favorite was Jay Perez. And he loved us. Me and my sister were his everything. He literally spent all of his time with us. And a lot of the times that we spent with my dad were actually talking about the Southside of San Antonio. Because that man loved the Southside because that's where he grew up. And all things San Antonio, that man loved to talk about. So we grew up on the South Side, but we also moved to the North Side for a little bit because that's where he was working at the time. And we would take plenty of trips back to the South Side to visit with family and go to some of our favorite spots. In particular, flea markets. We were a flea market family. So Poteet Flea Market on Sundays. The Centennial Flea Market was one of our favorites. They had lots of great shopping and food and the music in the air. Like, it was such a vibe. I'm so sad it doesn't exist anymore. But we would also go to some of our favorite spots to eat, like Bud Jones. Anybody? Bud Jones? So Bud Jones is just a nostalgic spot for me. You'll still catch me there every once in a while. So a little short story on Bud Jones. So they have this all-you-can-eat special. And my dad would actually get the all-you-can-eat special. And one thing about that, you're not supposed to share, by the way. But I was so indecisive. I couldn't figure out if I wanted the chicken fried steak or the fish. But he would let me live my surf and turf dreams and hook me up with a piece of fish. Shh, don't tell anybody, but Jones, if you're watching, no, he didn't. But I loved that about him. And one of my fondest memories was actually going to a beautiful park that still exists here. So if you've never been to Espada Park on the South Side, highly recommend. It's gorgeous. We would go as a family and go pick up some snacks at the corner store and head over to Espada Park and just eat our snacks and look at the beautiful nature and people watch. And there's this little part where you can actually like go over the water. I don't know if it exists anymore, probably if it's heavy rain, but you can go over the water. And my dad would go over the water really slow and let us open the doors as we were looking at the water. Just simple little moments like that, right? But anytime we were on the South Side, he was always pointing out places. Look, I went there, I did this, I did that. That's where my friend lived, this and that. He would tell us a story of when he went to Morrill Elementary, and it was right across the way from La Fiesta on Flores. And his dad actually worked there for many, many years. So he would point out from his window of his classroom and say, "Look, that's my dad pushing in the carts." He was so proud of his dad, and I thought that was so cute. And he also mentioned that my grandma was actually a tour guide at the missions when she was like 13 or 14, and she would wear a cute little Mexican dress and tell people about the history of San Antonio. And I was like, that's so cool. I feel like he got the love of San Antonio from his mom, and then I inherited that love from him. It's just so awesome the way that worked. So I ended up starting my Instagram page talking about San Antonio, mostly the places that I grew up going to, a lot of places on the Southside. And it started doing really well. My dad was so proud of me. My family was so proud of me. But my dad would tell everybody, "You have to follow my daughter's blog." And I'm like, "Dad, it's not a blog. It's just Instagram. But I appreciate the support anyway." So that was so cute. Yeah, he would tell everybody to follow me. And I thought that was he was just so proud that I was talking about the city that he loves so much. And my TikTok actually started blowing up after the pandemic. A lot of videos started blowing up, and I was being recognized for showcasing amazing local businesses. And KSAT actually reached out, and they were like, "We want to do an interview with you." And I was so excited because as a San Antonian, getting recognized by KSAT, are you kidding me? That is so cool. So I was like really excited, told my whole family, and of course they were so excited for me. So I did the interview, and my dad worked not too far away from where I was doing the interview. And I was so excited to actually go and tell him, like, after the interview was done, all about it. So I did. I finished the interview. I had it at one of those local mom and pop shops that I love, and we talked about San Antonio and why I was doing it, and they were telling me how much of an impact I made on these local businesses, and I was like, whoa, this is crazy. So I went to tell my dad all about it, and he was so excited. He was like, "I can't wait to see it." And unfortunately, he fell ill. I took him to the hospital, and he never made it out of the hospital. So he didn't get to see my interview. He didn't get to see anything that I've accomplished. At least I don't think he has, but if he has, if he's seeing it, I hope that whoever he's meeting, wherever he is, he's also telling them to follow my blog or to tell people to follow my blog. And honestly, I think everybody here should follow my blog. Do it for my dad, do it for my papa. It's Siempre San Antonio on Instagram and TikTok, and everything that I do, talking about San Antonio, the cumbias that I dance to, the Tejano songs that I sing at karaoke, the flea markets that I go to, and all of the amazing businesses that I showcase, I do it in his honor. Thank you.
Let's give another round of applause for her father, Mario.
I gotta go to the Pulga this weekend now.
I know, we gotta go to the
Thanks
flea
for the
market.
reminder, Gabby. Whew. All right, so our next storyteller is Dianne Garcia. Dianne shares a story about exploring her roots while reconnecting with someone close to her.
Please put your hands together for Dianne Garcia.
Feels good. So my mom is an immigrant twice over, but she would never call herself that. She was born in Ecuador into a very well-to-do Catholic family, and she came here when she was 16, already married and pregnant. A few years after that, several things happened. She found herself divorced with 2 kids, and really nothing to her name. She decided to stay here in the U.S. and go back to school. She, at school, met my dad, who's from here. And a few years after that, they had moved to New Jersey with my 2 half-brothers and had me. So by the time I was born, she had already been in the U.S. for 10 years and had really assimilated. At that time, it was seen as a good thing for immigrants to blend in. You didn't want to stand out. We were just at that time coming out of the era when kids were beaten in school for speaking in Spanish. And she really wanted me to be just like everyone else. So she only spoke to us in Spanish at home. And I think also because of the hard things that she had experienced when she first got here, those years of struggle, she really wanted to put her past behind her. So she never talked to me about her culture, her past, her upbringing. And I think also like the disillusionment of the promises that she had felt like she had as a kid, and then everything that happened, she just rejected it. And especially Catholicism. She was like an adamant atheist, still is. And she really brought me up very strongly to believe that people who believe in God are fools. She also very much believed it was common in Latin American culture at that time. It still really is today to think of lighter-skinned people, people of European descent instead of indigenous descent as superior. She very much still carries that with her as kind of a remnant of her childhood. So she thinks of herself as a white European. She hates it if I call her brown, but like when I look at her and when I look at me, like that's what I see. And I think that's what you would see, but that's all I'm going to say on that topic because she's going to watch this. So for all of these reasons, I didn't have a context for being a child of an immigrant. I didn't have language around that. I didn't have pride around my heritage growing up. I just thought that we were like everybody else, that we were just your totally middle of the road, middle class, New Jersey suburban family. And of course, we were different. I didn't know it at the time. We'd have dinner at 10 or 11 at night, most nights. She cooked all kinds of Ecuadorian foods, seco de chivo and ceviche. She'd sometimes bring home a cow's tongue and cut it up and cook it for us. And we would celebrate on New Year's Eve. In Ecuadorian tradition, you burn a straw man to send out the old year. So we would do that every year. And I even went to visit Ecuador when I was a kid because my abuelito was dying. But I knew so little at the time that I actually thought abuelito was his name. It took me a long time to realize that. So there were kind of like all these pieces of the puzzle, but I never really put them together. My parents' marriage was also difficult. They divorced, and when I was 9, my mom told me she was moving to England. She had met a man at work from England and decided that she really wanted to pursue that relationship. And she left, and I stayed here with my dad, and I visited every year, a couple of weeks, less as I got older. We talked on the phone occasionally, but I basically had to do the rest of my growing up without her, and I never got to know her as the person that I was becoming, and that was hard. I mean, I think abandonment is the right term for how I felt, and I wondered, in a way that a kid should never have to, if my mom actually loved me. And I wondered, too, if I could love her after that. So, 35 years later, she is still in England, still married happily to the same guy. That was the one. And I am in Texas. I have a family. I have 2 kids. And I'm a pastor, which is... like another story for another day. But as a pastor, I started to work with immigrant families because there's lots of families coming through San Antonio from other countries, and actually eventually planted and still lead my own church serving the immigrant community here. And very quickly, I realized that my high school Spanish was not going to serve me, that I needed to improve. So I started to, go on Duolingo. I looked into some online classes. I was clicking on my phone. I did that for a few months. And then one day, it just hit me that I knew someone who was a native Spanish speaker. So I reached out to my mom, and we started to talk over Zoom because it was the pandemic, 3 or 4 times a week. And she would send me these exercises and correct them for me. And we'd read books in English and translate them to Spanish and vice versa. And I would send her my sermons in English. And she would spend hours translating them into Spanish for me. And it was great. She was super insightful because she actually had all this like biblical knowledge from when she was a kid. So it was really, really helpful. And she still helps me with my sermons today, like 150, 200 sermons later. She's still helping me with that. And, you know, as part of that, we were doing these exercises in language, but had all these conversations too about all the things you talk about in church and in books. We talked about life and community and family and struggle and just conversations that we had never had before. And at some point she brought out this box of letters that my abuelito, her father, had written to her when she had first come here to this country. And she had not opened that box since before I was born. And she started to read them to me, and I started to learn about him too through that and her early experiences here and how difficult it was. And it's all just been like this resurrection in our relationship. And now she calls me hijita, and I call her mamita. And a couple of years ago, we were together in person, and she said, "I love you." And I don't remember her ever saying that to me before. I mean, maybe she did, and it just didn't hit, you know, but I knew it was true for the first time. I knew that I didn't wonder anymore if she loved me. I knew that she did, and I knew that I loved her too. And she would call all of that a series of coincidences. And I would call it God. But one way or another, this inheritance that I had opened this door between us and allowed us to have this relationship and allowed me to do all these things and help all these people and plant this church that I never could have done without her. And this inheritance, you know, I'd been carrying it around with me all this time, and I didn't know what it was, and I didn't even know it was there. And then one day, it changed my life. Thank you.
Whoa. One more time for Dianne. From atheist to pastor. I want to hear that story. I really do. Yeah, I'm like, what? Yeah. Ooh, you okay?
Yeah, I'm just thinking I need to add these to my memory box.
I know.
You know, I definitely keep one of those.
All right, we're going to get back into it. We have 4 more. Usually we have 3. We have 4 for you because it's the last one of the year, and I wanted to do something nice for you guys. Are you excited? All right.
So our next storyteller is Joe DeMont. Joe shares a story about the things his family does while most of us are asleep.
Please welcome me in joining Joe DeMont.
This story is dedicated to all insomniacs. Picture this. I'm 7 years old. My grandmother tells me she wakes up at night. My sins rise up to haunt me, she says with a little laugh. And then she says when this happens, she doesn't get mad or aggravated. She will knit, sew, read, until she gets sleepy and goes back to bed. Years later, I realize that she was trying to tell me about a family sleep disorder that I might inherit and how best to deal with it. We've got sleep talkers in the family and sleep singers. Once my little niece dreams that she is an opera star and starts singing Queen of the Night at the top of her lungs. She wakes up the whole house. The family goes to her room, wakes her up, tells her she's having a dream, and it's time to bring the curtain down on her performance. And I've got a nephew who's at the University of Georgia. He comes home on vacation, but dreams that he's still back at a Georgia Bulldog football game. He starts doing the Bulldog chant. Woof, 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 woof. Not only sleep chanters, but also sleep walkers in the family. One cold winter night, My mom is driving down the street to our house, and she looks out, and there's some little kid walking. Who let that child out in the middle of the night, she says. Then realizes it's her own 5-year-old son, Jim, who, while dreaming, got up out of bed and went outside walking. Mom picks him up and takes him home gently. You might remember that we used to think that if you startled a sleepwalker, they could die. She ties Jim into bed with sheets, ties him snugly, like you tie your shoes. And recently, my granddaughter told me about her dream that she's late for high school. She climbs down the ladder from her bunk bed and goes to the dresser and starts pulling clothes out. Her sister hears the commotion and says, "It's 3 a.m. You're having a dream. Go back to bed." Come to find out, I'm a sleepwalker. One day I'm taking a nap in the afternoon. My wife comes home. I hear a noise. It disturbs me. I think the house is on fire. I jump up and try to get out the window. "Stop," my wife says. That wakes me up. Then my wife says, "What is your problem?" Another time, I dream I'm at the beach. The palm trees, the sunshine, the sand, the waves rolling in. I'm enjoying it, but then I decide I need to go back to the condo. I pick up my favorite beach towel, wrap it around myself, and start walking back. I wake up when I step off the end of the bed, fall onto the floor, dragging the blanket. Yes, my friends, life really can be a beach. My wife, still in the bed, says, "What is your problem?" In addition, I have another issue. I wear a plastic night guard on my teeth to protect them from the grinding at night. Last summer, while I'm asleep, it comes loose from my teeth and heads towards the back of my throat. I can feel it going. I try to catch it, I try to stop it, but I can't. I swallow it. What to do now? Ask Google. Google says, not to worry, this too shall pass. Those of us who suffer from apnea stop breathing altogether while asleep. I used to have this recurring dream. I'm swimming underwater, but I need a breath. I start swimming as fast as I can to the top. I burst through the top, gasping for breath. My wife beside me in the bed says, "You have a sleep disorder. You need to go to a sleep doctor." I said, "No, the doctor's going to want to hook me up to one of those machines that blow air into my lungs all night. I don't want a machine to sleep. I'm a natural man." My wife says, "Look, I got a deal for you. You go to the sleep doctor. If he says you have no problem, I'll quit bitching about it. If he says you do have a problem, you can get the help you need." I tell the sleep doctor how I get up at night, like my grandmother who would knit, sew, read. The sleep doctor says this was a common sleep pattern in the Middle Ages. I say, "Doc, you're not the first one to tell me I'm medieval." Then I say, "I might have possible apnea." He hooks me up to some monitors, has me go to sleep. Next morning, he looks at the results. "You have a serious sleep disorder. In a lot of countries, I'd be taking the car keys away from you. Do you ever feel drowsy at the wheel?" I admit that sometimes I'm apt to doze off while waiting for the light to turn green. So, natural man that I am, I now go to sleep with a plastic night guard on my teeth and a machine blowing air into my lungs. The force is with me, folks. What do I do when I wake up at night? My grandmother would knit, sew, read. I read, write, think. Sleep disorders are the way of our people. My grandmother told me I should find a gracious and constructive way to live with them. Thank you very much. Goodbye, good night, and sleep well.
One more time for Joe. I want to steal him. All right. Our next storyteller is Lydia Santos. Lydia is going to share a story about the importance of making each moment count.
Let's all welcome Lydia Santos.
All right, here we go. I'm not frightened of dying. Any time will do, I don't mind. Why should I be frightened of dying? There's no reason for it. You've got to go sometime. This line, as some of you might know, is spoken at the beginning of Pink Floyd's Great Gig in the Sky off the Dark Side of the Moon album. If you're not familiar, it's a 4-minute song with this woman just like belting runs. There's no other words. You know the one. So my brother and I are known to duet this at karaoke, and it's a huge hit. Again, there are no words. It's just like vocalizations. We happen to be intimately familiar with the song thanks to our mom, Linda. Picture this. It's summer 1998, and I'm 8 years old. We are on a road trip to Arroyo Seco, New Mexico to spend the summer with some friends. Linda is 51, and we are traveling west in her 50th birthday gift, her dream car, a Jaguar XJ6 in British racing green. And the license plate reads Gone to Seed, which is fitting for a Master Gardener's midlife crisis car. Also notable is the Still Trippin' bumper sticker, which is proudly displayed in the center of the back windshield so that it glows red with the brake lights. But the key feature on this particular trip is the 6 CD changer in the trunk, which contains 6 identical copies of Dark Side of the Moon. Yeah. So I did the math, and on this 12-hour road trip, we would listen to Dark Side of the Moon approximately 17 times. Yeah, so you could say my mom was eccentric. She certainly didn't do anything halfway. She was born in a small mining town in McMecken, West Virginia, and she had lived quite a life before she met my dad, her third husband. And I know, scandalous. At the time, she was working as a physical therapist at UC Davis in Sacramento. She was 38. My dad was 27. Okay, some of y'all are doing the math right now. And he was the hot new Chicano rehab resident at the hospital from Laredo, Texas. And so they struck up a conversation in the parking lot. They started dating. And pretty early on in their relationship, she had a proposal for him. She was approaching 40 and had always wanted to be a mom. And he could have as much or as little involvement as he desired, but he seemed like a pretty good genetic candidate for this endeavor. I mean, can't you tell? So my dad is a little bit more on the traditional side, and he proposed marriage unsuccessfully a few times before being told that he needed to chill and wait till they had been dating for at least a year. But my mom ended up breaking the 1-year rule and proposed to him on a trip to Argentina, to which he said, "Yes, but please get up off the floor." So they came back to Texas. She had my brother at 40 and me at 43. And having sown her wild oats throughout the 60s, 70s, and 80s, she was ready to settle down and be a full-time stay-at-home mom. But like everything else, she was not about to do this halfway. So she was fully committed into raising 2 gifted and talented children without ever going to preschool or daycare. My brother and I both started kindergarten already able to read and write, and that was all thanks to her. When we did start school, she would be waiting for us every day when we got off the bus to ask, "Did you make any good mistakes today?" So you could say that our childhood was pretty idyllic, but little did we know it was only about to get better. When I was in the 1st grade, my parents went on a trip to Europe. They went to France and Spain to hike in the Pyrenees. And when they came back, I was gifted this elaborate pop-up book of Monet's garden and lily pond. And I was 6 years old, but I insisted that we all go back and I had to see this for myself. And unfortunately, I was told that I'd have to wait until I graduated from high school. So imagine my surprise when only less than 1 year later, I was pulled out of school and my family went to France and I got to see Monet's enormous, I'm talking like 42-foot water lily paintings. And we went to his house and saw the garden. We saw the lily pond and I was like, this is awesome. You know, this was 11 years before I graduated high school, but I wasn't about to question it. You know, you want to take me to Europe? That's the offer still stands. You want to take me to Europe? So suddenly it was like, no was not in our vocabulary. Whatever we wanted as kids, it was like, yeah, let's do it. You want to go to Fiesta, Texas and skip church? Let's go, and we'll go to confession next week, you know? If you want ice cream for breakfast, let's put a scoop on top of your waffle. It was like anything we wanted, we got. You know, again, I'm not questioning it. We started traveling like crazy. We went on a cruise to Alaska to look at the glaciers, and we spent a few weeks in Guatemala with some of my mom's old friends. We even spent a week on a boat traveling through the Galapagos Islands off the coast of Ecuador. I mean, this was like, I'm telling you, idyllic childhood. It was incredible. So it turns out that aside from a workaholic Dr. Dad able to fund all this adventuring, the secret to a truly epic childhood is a terminally ill mom. Oh my God. Who knew? So what we didn't know, what my brother and I didn't know at the time, that the reason behind all this adventuring was an ALS diagnosis. So for those of you who were not made aware by the 2014 viral Ice Bucket Challenge, ALS is a fatal neurodegenerative disease that causes all of your motor neurons to die off. So at the end, patients are left fully paralyzed. They require breathing machines and feeding tubes and those Stephen Hawking-style talking computers. And it's brutal. It's totally brutal. But just like my mom never did anything halfway in life, she was not about to die halfway. So we're going to keep the enjoyment going for as long as we can until the wheels fell off. So while we were doing all this adventuring, unaware of the diagnosis, Mom was slowly losing her mobility. She started out using 2 walking sticks. By the dark side road trip, she was using a wheelchair. And then by that fall, road trip, she was using a walker. By that fall, she was in a wheelchair. And they couldn't keep it a secret anymore. Mom was going to die. But knowing this, we kept the enjoyment going. She asked 2 of her artist friends she commissioned this coffin table and threw a huge party, essentially a living wake. And all of her friends from her past lives came to celebrate and kind of send her off. For my 9th birthday, the last birthday that I would spend with her, she borrowed a stretcher from the fire department and instructed us to wrap her in blankets and duct tape her to it so she could be carried to the top of Enchanted Rock by my dad and some of her friends. So I'm sure you can imagine we got a lot of interesting looks that day because you don't expect to see someone on a stretcher going up the mountain. But that was my mom. In the last year of her life, we spoke freely and openly about the end and everything that would come after. I remember sitting in her lap and coming up with a list of places where we would spread her ashes after she was gone to kind of continue the adventure in her memory. She even made a list of women that she thought my dad should date. So the end was coming, and we were going to be as prepared as anybody could be. We celebrated the new millennium together, and 2 weeks later, we said goodbye at home while listening to Dark Side of the Moon.
So here we are, 25 years later. Am I frightened of dying? Maybe. I'm a mom now, and I can't imagine being told that I won't be able to see my child grow up. But I'm certainly not afraid of discussing the inevitability of death. And, you know, with everything that ALS took from my mom, it gave us the gift of certainty and time to enjoy what time we had left. So while my son's childhood might not contain the same level of adventure as mine did, it certainly will contain a lot of joy and appreciation for our precious lives, hopefully without the threat of imminent death.
She got me.
I wore
One
my
more
waterproof.
time. Yeah, one more time for her mom. Life is a gift, y'all. It is a gift. I can't stress it enough. All right. Wow. I'm all emotional. Who's going to hug me? Actually, I'm sorry. I don't want to be touched. I have intimacy issues. All right.
Same. Our next storyteller is Erika Cash. Erika shares a story about a realization she reached after a couple of dates.
Please welcome to the stage, Erika Cash.
4 years ago, I got out of a long-term relationship after a particularly difficult stretch in my health. When the relationship ended, I was able to focus on doctor recommendations and treatments, and my health began to improve. So I decided to dip my toes into the dating pool again. My first post-breakup date was with a chemistry PhD student in Austin. We went to some trendy spots, lots of reclaimed wood and overpriced coffee was noted. And on paper, I thought we could connect. At the very least, I thought we could discuss, I don't know, the perils of grad school or something, but there were definitely some red flags from the start. He was tall and seemingly smart, but he had a controlling streak that peaked out when he reached over to close my sweater, deciding for me that I was showing too much cleavage. Well, the date felt awkward, I thought, but nothing would prepare me for what would happen after. Later that evening, he called me and he said, well, I've been thinking. I was feeling kind of anxious after the date. I thought it went pretty well, but I really want to be able to climb a mountain with my future wife. Oddly specific, and I definitely don't want my future children to have a disease. First of all, eugenics man, what makes you think I would want to have kids with you anyway? Secondly, ouch. This depressed me, not because of the opinion of this pseudo-intellectual chemist, but because I was worried that this is what dating would be. After all, I am a children's psychotherapist. I help children process grief, trauma, abuse, and just the difficulties of being a child. I think at the very least I'd be an okay mom, maybe. So these words of his stirred up some feelings I've had for a long time, particularly feelings of defectiveness. I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, or EDS. It is a connective tissue disorder, basically meaning that the glue holding my body together is more like bubble gum than super glue. It's an autosomal dominant hereditary condition, meaning that I have a 50-50% chance of passing it on to children. So EDS has not only shaped my connective tissue and my nervous system, but also the way that I experience the world. Growing up with EDS wasn't easy. Joint dislocations, fainting, and a heart rate that will spike up to 160, probably like right now, was all pretty commonplace for me. But yeah, when I was 2 years old, I actually experienced my first joint dislocation. I was left screaming in a daycare high chair, neglected and alone. Nobody really understood when I fainted in choir class or when I dislocated my shoulder during a game of tag. You're being dramatic, they would tell me, or worse, you're just lazy. One particularly scarring moment happened in high school. I fainted one morning before class, and I went to go find the school nurse. And the school, while I was there, my heart rate would not go below 160. So she, instead of helping me and bandaging my bloodied hands, she accused me of being high. I was stunned. How can I even begin to clarify a misunderstanding like that when my body's symptoms already feel like a betrayal? Well, luckily, not every date was like that first date that I mentioned, thankfully. The second date I went on also ended in a way I didn't expect. So on Christmas Eve, I met up with a Korean pilot who had traveled to America to obtain his commercial pilot's license. We walked around a local university campus. It was pretty quiet and peaceful during the holiday break. He began to tell me about his life in Korea and how he often had feelings of defectiveness. He told me that his darker skin set him apart from others, and how his teachers and classmates would tell him that he wouldn't amount to anything and he was trouble. He explained to me about Korea's caste system that perpetuates some of these assumptions, that somebody's worth and success can be tied to the color of their skin, to their genetics. He, despite this, was able to come to America and follow his dreams. But this was mostly inspired by his favorite movie, an American sci-fi movie called Gattaca. Now, I've never seen this movie, but in Gattaca, according to him, society has embraced genetic engineering to the point where designer humans are the norm, and those born naturally, like the protagonist Vincent Freeman, are labeled as defective and even denied opportunities based off of their genetic inferiority. Sounds familiar? Vincent, born with a heart defect and a predicted lifespan of only 30 years, always wanted to be an astronaut, but that was reserved for the genetically elite. The core message of Gattaca is that human potential isn't defined by your genes. It is defined by your ambition, determination, and grit. It really did mirror the pilot's dream. So this story, the pilot's favorite movie, him and his favorite movie, left a lasting impact on me, particularly due to how it mirrored my own challenges. What did I learn from these two dates? Well, I learned from the first that some people with a degree in chemistry think it qualifies them to practice social Darwinism. It doesn't. And from the second, that even in the most unexpected moments, somebody can remind you that your worth isn't tied to your challenges. So life will always have its critics. Some might even have a PhD. But don't let them define you. Be like Vincent Freeman. Defy the odds, rewrite the rules, and reach for the stars, literally. And be a pilot, an astronaut, or even a mom with connective tissue made of bubble gum. Thank you.
Okay, I want you to clap if you've seen Gattaca. I'm just curious. You guys are lying. Okay. You guys are lying. I hate that movie. Just kidding. It sounds like a good movie. I haven't seen it, I think. I don't know. No, I saw it. I hated it. Okay.
I definitely have not.
All right. All right. We good? We're at the end. Are you sad? Yeah, there's one. That's what the end. Hello. Yeah, there's one more. Okay, let me do the hosting. There's one more. You sad?
Yeah, there's one more. Yeah.
Okay, let's go. It's our final storyteller of the night. Is Frances Perez. Frances shares a story about a family curse.
Please welcome our final storyteller, Frances Perez.
I've never seen a picture of my grandmother, no matter what age, where she doesn't look fucking old and angry. At the age of 14, she had her first child, and by 33, her last and 11th child, my mother. Her and my grandpa lived in a small 2-bedroom shack in Laredo, Texas, in the very poor neighborhood of Cantaranas. What they didn't know when they moved in was that they would be moving in to 2 really weird neighbors. Their names were Licha and Chalo, and for some weird reason, Licha and Chalo loved to watch my grandparents' property through the chain link fence that separated them. My grandma would often catch them just standing there like the shining twins, expressionless and silent. Sometimes she would catch Licha whispering under her breath, and Chalo would be standing next to her like a puppet, not saying a word. This went on for so many months until my grandparents got tired of their behavior and decided to construct a cinder block wall to obstruct their creepy gazes. Licha and Chalo took great offense to the construction of this wall and decided one day after it was done to take sledgehammers and try to knock it down. You see, Licha and Chalo were not your run-of-the-mill peeping Toms. No. These guys were into the occult. Back then, Licha was known as the town's black magic witch. Day and night, people from all over Laredo and Nuevo Laredo would come to her house and have her cast spells and curses on people. And if there's one thing you don't do to your town's bruja, is call the fucking cops on her. So, one night after the police were called, they were charged with vandalism and property damage. One night after the police were called, one of my aunts woke up at 3 a.m. to find Licha standing outside the door. She runs to my grandmother and wakes her up. Ma, Licha's outside. My grandma jumps out of bed, runs to the front door, and opens it to find Licha gone. On the floor, a neatly wrapped loaf of white Wonder Bread. She picks it up and sees that in between each slice is this weird white powdery substance mixed with corn husk hairs. Angry, it's 3 a.m, she's cranky, barefoot. She, in her bata, her nightgown, runs next door screaming at the top of her lungs, Licha! Sal, cabrona! Which means, come out, bitch! The only person brave enough to follow her is her youngest, 11th child, my mother, who witnessed the entire event. So she's out there screaming, Sal cabrona, pinche pendeja, vieja fea. Licha and Chalo come out of their house, again, expressionless and silent, and just stare at her. They might as well have been saying, red rum, red rum. So my grandmother's out there yelling at the top of her lungs, Pinche pendeja, you think I'm afraid of you, you fucking bitch? I'm not afraid of the fucking devil. This is what I think of your black magic voodoo bullshit. So she then grabs a loaf of bread above her head and rips it apart and shakes all the contents onto herself. Her face is covered in the white powder and her hair has the corn husk hairs. Maybe a little bit got on my mom, who's probably crying next to her. I'm a bigger witch than you are, bitch. And you know what, Licha? I know how you're gonna fucking die. You're gonna choke on your tongue for all the spells and curses that you put on innocent people, and you're gonna die alone. Pendeja. At this point, my mom's crying, dragging her back home, and they go to sleep. Licha and Chalo didn't give her the response that she was expecting. This is the part of the story where I think that maybe my grandmother did unintentionally curse my entire family. You see, not one single person in my stereotypically gigantic Mexican family has lived a normal, uncursed life. Every single person has had some form of trauma or tragedy affect them. If I were to stand up here and tell you every single thing that has happened to every person, I'd be up here for like 2 weeks. But I can give you guys a couple examples. My grandmother's firstborn son died in a freak car accident at the age of 37, where his infant son was the sole survivor. Another one of my aunts had a gun pointed to her head by her abusive husband while holding their newborn son. Another one of my uncles was in a work explosion where he broke an ungodly amount of bones in his body and was in a coma for a couple months. Another one of my aunts has severe bipolar disorder. 2 of my uncles have been incarcerated. More than half of the 11 siblings are alcoholics or recovering. My mom's a Jehovah's Witness. Thank you. And the list just goes on and on. The curse has even bled into my generation, the second generation of 27 cousins, with me being number 27. Again, I could be up here. That's a story for another time about how it's affected all of us. But I know you guys want to know the cheese. You want to know how the curse affected me. This is hard to say in front of all of my family, but it's really hard being the most beautiful and talented person. It's a weight that I carry on my shoulders so heavily. And this hair doesn't do itself. In 2011, at the age of 14, my grandmother passed away from multiple myeloma, which is a rare cancer of the blood. I remember not crying at her funeral because I wasn't that close to her, and quite frankly, she was actually pretty abusive. Sometimes I wonder if the Wonder Bread curse never even existed, and maybe my mom just made it all up, or that it was, generational trauma, and the tragedies that have affected all of us are just our way of dealing with that. But I think the Wonder Bread curse is way cooler to say, so I guess we'll never know. But I can tell you guys one thing. 4 decades after the Wonder Bread incident, Lydia did end up dying alone in her nursing home from diabetic complications that resulted in her tongue swelling up, leading her to choke on it, just like my grandmother said she would.